Right now, I'm surrounded by some of the best mentors in the entire world, and it has shaped me in a way that I didn't even know was fathomably possible. You don't understand the impact that people around you until you surround yourself with such a higher caliber of people. So I'm gonna go over 3 of the mentors that I have that have really quite drastically changed my life in a multitude of ways and have progressed me more than I ever thought was imaginable. And hopefully you can pick up some of the lessons that I've learned from working with these guys that have really helped me live my absolute dream life that I didn't even know was feasibly possible. The first one is this guy, George Gammon, and I have his logo tattooed on my leg right here because that's how I started working for him. When I was in high school, me and PJ behind the camera, we were running a little business, but during COVID that got shut down. And so I just started studying economic business because I thought that I was into that. And I was really into making money and trying to progress myself further. And so I came to the cognitive decision that, hey, I'm not gonna go to college. And instead of going to college, I'm gonna try and mentor myself under someone. And the absolute dream person for me was George Gammon. And I could just visualize it so clearly. I'd go on walks with my mom and I'd say, I would just talk to her as if I was already working for George, and I had never even spoken to him before. During that time, I was emailing him just about every single day, telling him that I would be working for him. And I haven't even showed George those messages because I doubt he ever read them. But what I did was he was having a meetup for his birthday in January of 2021. And he said, if anyone wants to show up, you can. At that point, I was living in Boston. I was getting desperate. I really wanted to work for someone soon because I was a senior in high school and I wasn't going to school. And I was desperately trying to apprentice myself under someone. I was reaching out to dozens of people. I never heard anything back, or I had no real opportunity. And so I said, this is my opportunity. I'm gonna fly to Arizona. This was my first time on a plane. I'd never flown before. And before I went, I got George's logo tattooed on my leg, took my first flight to go meet him. And a few months after that, I started working for him after continuous harassment. I didn't really give him an option. And after working with George, it completely changed my life. He introduced me to all of the clients that I have today, pretty much. He's opened my mind up to the possibilities of life. And you really just get to fast track what other people are doing. Because if you're surrounded, right now, I'm surrounded by people who all run, let's say 10-figure per year businesses. George is retired. He doesn't really have a business anymore, but he did in the past. And so anytime you have a question, anytime you're doing something wrong, these people can show you what you're doing wrong. And it has just exacerbated my life and blown it up to a degree that I don't really know many other young people in my position being able to do the same things. A lot of them make internet money, which allows them to, let's say, make $50,000 a month or whatever, and they can lease a nice car. But there is truly a difference between people who are making internet money and real business owners, and being able to integrate yourself into those worlds it has been the singular best decision I've ever made in my entire life, and it's completely changed it. So I started working for George. I moved out to Arizona in September of 2021, where I was just doing macroeconomic research, and we found out that, hey, it doesn't really matter who knows the most about a subject, because he has a YouTube channel, he talks about macroeconomics, and he was really talking about a lot of freedom stuff because the COVID mandates were coming out and it was very unconstitutional. And so he was calling that out. But it doesn't matter how good your messaging is, how much you know about a subject. It matters that people watch it. Then you have to figure out, well, how do you get people to watch it? And then there was a bunch of other avenues going on. So George is still my #1 mentor today. He was my first and one of my best friends in the entire world now. The next person that I met, I've become a dear friend of mine that I don't see too often. He could be the smartest business icon I have ever met in my entire life. My second mentor is this guy named Dane, who I actually haven't spoken to in quite a while, but he's had probably the most impact on my current business model. And the reason for that is when I first met him, it was through George at George's live event. And me and Damien hit it off. The first night I met him, he ended up calling up his buddy who owns this really high-end restaurant called Carbone's in Miami and said, hey, I'm coming in, do what you have to do, which was a baller move. This guy ran a massive NASDAQ-ly traded company. And we talked for hours and hours over a few day period. And this is when I was first starting to branch off and start a little side hustle and trying to grow a secondary business. And it was kind of a short form content agency where I was taking clips of everyone else's YouTube channels and I was trying to do like an Andrew Tate model where no one else was doing this yet. This is a very common theme of especially Twitch streamers or other people. They'll do this short form content distribution model. But at the time, this is when Andrew Tate was first starting to blow up and nobody else was doing this. Me and George were probably 2 of the first people to figure this out. I was telling George about it. We were going over it, studying it, or what I did is was, let me try and do this for other people. And that was exactly what I did. I took on a few clients, was making a bunch of revenue. I was actually making a ton of revenue, but zero profit, and I had to shut it down. The goal of that was to work with all those other people that I looked up to, that I was reaching out to in the past, trying to get to work for them for free. So I worked with probably every single person in the macroeconomic space to some degree. Every single one of them, because I was doing it for free and doing it out of pocket. So who's gonna turn that down, especially when I built the relationship with them through George, and George had already talked me up a lot. And Damien, I was talking to him when I got it developed and I was making a bunch of revenue, not a whole lot of profit. And he said, dude, you gotta do something else. He said, what's the scalability on this as to what you're doing? And I said, well, I think if I do it really well, I can probably make 100 grand a month. He said, dude, with your talent, you're a fucking idiot if you settle for $100,000 per month. He said, you're gonna be working all day, every day doing that. Even if you systematize it and you get everything handled, maybe you're making 30% margins. You pocket 30,000, you're spending 70,000 on a team. He said, just, you have to do something with a lot more leverage and scalability, or you're never really going to get to that next level. And he said, talking to you, I know that you're ambitious enough to where you're gonna wanna go to that next level. And at the time I said, I think I agree with you, but I'm gonna stick this out for at least a few more months. And what do you know? I ended up shutting that down. It wasn't because of the conversation I had with Damien, but it was me coming over my stubbornness and realizing that he was 100% right. And the only way I would get to the next level is by changing the model to where I had a lot more upside. He's also probably the smartest person I've ever met in my entire life. And every single person who ever's met this guy also agrees that he's the smartest person they've ever met. He is the most interesting person potentially on the planet. And he started a new business. One of the reasons why I wanted to make a bunch of revenue was so I can invest in it, because he was doing a seed round. And what do you know? That company is fucking crushing it now. He had a short-term window where he wanted to grow it and scale and then sell it off. And he's doing just exactly what he said he was going to do. But I have a bunch of pictures with him. I'm gonna actually blur out his name because he's a very secretive guy who really doesn't want to be talked about. But he was playing 5D chess. And so if I talked to him about what I was doing today, he would see the scalability with it. And he would be able to see the big picture. I think the bigger problem was with myself in the past is I didn't have a vision as to where it was going 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or how large something like this could actually grow. And that was why this guy had such a large impact on my business and my development. It's also why it's so crucial to have people who have been in your situation before as these kind of mentors are, because they can see the problems that you're gonna run into before you actually have them. And that's exactly what happened. And if I listened, I probably would be a lot further ahead already. So the third mentor is this guy that I work with now who has 10,000 apartments. And he's one of the nicest, coolest guys I've ever met in my life. His name is Ken McElroy. And before I even started working with him, I made a video on YouTube because I've been doing a challenge where I've been making a video every day for 1,000 days. That's how long I've committed to, a little over a year into it. And one of the first videos I made was my exact plan to go from $10,000 to $50,000 per month. That was the title of the video. And the plan, there was this guy, Ken McElroy, I had met because of George. George, the common theme here is every single person I know is because of George, and he's saved my life, and he's like the best guy ever, and he's introduced me to everyone. But this is when I really started to want to develop the business model that I had. I already had another few clients where I was doing the business model where I have today, where it's helping businesses help them grow their social medias, mainly YouTube, so they can drive more revenue and get more customers for their business. But I knew Ken had a gaping hole, and he's incredibly wealthy, and he's willing to pay for a solution. And so I was going to be at a mastermind with him that George and Ken are business partners on. And I said, George, I think Ken has this massive gaping hole. He has the best real estate and business information in the entire, anywhere online. He has the #1 because he runs probably the largest business of anyone with a YouTube channel. I mean, just period. Probably not too many people have a multi-billion-dollar company that make video. I said, but he doesn't know how to get views. I said, if I took over his strategy, as George knew, that I would absolutely crush it, and I really want to do that. And George, being the great guy he is, he said, well, let's game plan it. How are we going to approach this? So first, I just laid the seeds with him, and I said, Ken, your YouTube channel sucks. Ken's like, really? What am I doing wrong? But that everyone always is just used to sucking up to these guys who make a ton of money. I wasn't doing that to be a dickhead. I was just saying, here's why it's bad. Here's what I think you can improve on. Here's why I think I'm the person that should be doing it for you. And I said, I'll do it for free. And he said, why don't you come down to Arizona for a few months, and I'll give you a place to stay in a car, and then we'll figure something out. And the car he gave me was a 1957 Porsche Speedster. Let me stay in one of his 10,000 apartment units. And the amount that I've learned from Ken is truly staggering. I mean, PJ is now starting to incorporate into a lot of these meetings that I have with him, but I just get to see exactly how he runs his business. And he'll tell me anything honestly. I can go to any person on his staff because I'll go in person to his office. He'll show show me his EOS org chart, which is exactly every single role in his company, what they do, who they report to, what the management looks like, what the accounting looks like. I get to peek behind the blinders as to how this company that he runs in 90 minutes per week produces 9 figures per year. It's the best learned experience I've ever had in my entire life. The business experience that I've gained being with Ken is I went from probably like a 2 to a, or I'd say probably like a 0.4 to like a 2. So it was like a 20x return on investment coming here and basically working for free for him. And now, since I'm starting to generate a ton of revenue, that's when you start to try and structure a deal to where you get paid and you can actually continue to progress forward. And from working with Ken, my business knowledge went from probably a 0.4, and that's a 0.4 out of 10, to probably like a 2, because I probably have like a 2 out of 10 for knowledge for business. Maybe not even that. I might be giving myself too much credit. The thing is though, it's really because of him and the surrounding friends that I get to hang out with, because I get to hang out with him and all of his YPO buddies, which that is some of the largest business owners in Arizona. That's who we're hanging out with. I mean, it's like the previous governor of Arizona and doing things that I couldn't even imagine. But that's simply because I provide him a ton of value. And because I provide him a ton of value and I'm explicitly clear that my goal is to learn as much as humanly possible. Anytime there's something going on, I'm always asking Ken, what can I do to improve? What am I doing wrong? What's the next step for me to really be able to grow this? Anytime we have a spare minute, I am asking him every single question in the entire world, because that was another part of the deal that we structured. My goal with you is I want to learn how to grow a business. You run the fucking coolest business in the world. I'm going to work for you for next to nothing, and you'll teach me how to do that. And so that's exactly what we structured. He's my third mentor that have really, really progressed me much more than I ever thought was possible.